You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning. It's April the 13th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. I'm live here at paceradio.net as well as at 420pace.ca. As you notice today, I am alone. Cindy is away, and she will be for the next 2 weeks. She's headed out west to do some training, so she'll be gone doing that, and I'll still be bringing the news to you. So other than that, I've got 7 stories for you today, including the effects of feeding chicken cannabis seeds. Whoever thought? Feed chicken cannabis seeds. So we're going to learn about that before the end of the show. And other than that, I've also got an update of what's going on in Nova Scotia, where I'm going to get the show started up. Here we go. This is coming to me from CBC.ca. Headline says, Chiefs call for moratorium on Nova Scotia cannabis raids after last week's highway protest. Mi'kmaq chiefs in Nova Scotia are demanding a moratorium on RCMP raids on cannabis stores in their communities. The call comes from the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq chiefs, comes after First Nation communities blocked a number of provincial highways last week in protest of increased police raids in their communities in recent months. Now, First Nation leaders say they have a treaty right to sell cannabis, which the provincial government denies. The Assembly said in a release Thursday that it wants a moratorium on these raids until it has a chance to have a real nation-to-nation talk with the province. It says, despite the claims from Justice Minister Scott Armstrong and Premier Tim Houston, no one from the provincial government has reached out to the group to set up a meeting, and its requests have gone unanswered. They say, we have long offered solutions to the provincial government on how Mi'kmaq could exercise our right to self-govern and still be transparent with them on how we intend to manage the sale of cannabis in our communities. But Nova Scotia has not been open to having any conversations with the leadership. Assembly co-chair and Close Cap First Nation Chief Sidney Peters says in a statement. Now, the Justice Department said in their statement that it had just sent a new letter to the chiefs on Thursday, offering to meet and discuss the shared objective of supporting community, ensuring public safety, and respecting the law. Now, the letter addressed to the Assembly of First Nations of Nova Scotia says any discussions around enforcement should be sent to the local police. So if you guys send that to the local police, it doesn't sound like they even want to even talk to them as they've been requesting, which is no, right? No, they should get together, have a talk, and go over things, make things better for everybody involved. You know, they can set things up in order so that the First Nations, they produce their own cannabis, their own products. Testing requirements can still all be met. There's no reason why they can't have their own system as everybody says, treaties. So, all right, from that, we're going to move on to our next story. This one's coming to me from Strat Canada. It's about a story here in Ontario, which I found a little bit interesting. So here we go. As I said, StratCan headline says, Ontario considering allowing cannabis stores to open 2 hours earlier. Yeah. Ontario is currently seeking public feedback on a proposal to allow cannabis stores to open as early as 7 a.m., 2 hours earlier than the current 9 a.m. allowance. I guess you can go in at 7 a.m. and really get your wake and bake, wouldn't you? Now, Ontario's Minister and Attorney General is seeking feedback on the proposal to amend provincial regulations. Now, under the current regulatory framework, the permitted hours of cannabis retail store operations in Ontario are between 9 a.m. and 11 p.m. Now, the formal change requires amendments to those provincial regulations. And the MAG, as the Attorney General, is also proposing regulations to allow cannabis delivery services to pick up products as early as 7 a.m., although the permitted delivery times would remain 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., mirroring delivery rules for alcohol retailers. Now, in a public notice, the Attorney General says the proposal would reduce regulatory burden by giving retailers greater flexibility in setting their operating hours. It would also support increased profitability by enabling stores to open 2 hours earlier each day. The agency says that it hopes such changes will, over time, help legal cannabis retailers to better compete with unlicensed illicit retailers and would create operational efficiencies for inspectors at the AGCO. Now, this consultation period is open to the public, and that comes from just started April the 9th, and you got until April the 24th to get your say in on that. Whether you want to have the stores open at 7 a.m. or if 9 o'clock is hunky-dory and fine with everybody. So, alrighty, from that story, we're going to move on to the next one. I just see I closed off a story that I wasn't supposed to, so we're going to miss it, and we're going to go on to the next one. This one is coming to me from there we go. I'll get the screen back again. The headline there: psychedelics like LSD, psilocybin, and DMT may rewire the brain in the same two ways, with implications for mental health. Now, different psychedelic medicines may feel worlds apart, but inside the brain, they appear to follow the same playbook. A study published in Nature Medicine finds that 5 major psychedelics, psilocybin, LSD, mescaline, DMT, and ayahuasca, produce the same 2 core effects. They weaken communication within established brain networks while increasing communication between them. Those changes reshape how information flows through the brain and may help explain why these medicines are showing promise for conditions like depression, anxiety, and addiction, despite their different chemistries. Now, despite acting through different chemical pathways in the brain, all 5 medicines produce the same large-scale pattern of activity. This is a breakthrough in how we think about psychedelic drugs, says senior author Daniel Bazak in a press release. They mentioned that for the first time, we show there's a common denominator among medicines that we currently consider completely separate. Now, under normal conditions, the brain is organized into distinct networks that handle specific functions, from vision and movement to memory and decision-making. These networks communicate with one another and remain mostly separate. Now, across all 5, connections within the networks weaken, while communication between different networks increase. In other words, the brain shifts from tightly organized, specialized activity towards a more globally connected state. In particular, the communication between increases between so-called transmodal networks, which handle abstract thinking, and unimodal networks tied to sensory and motor functions. Now, these changes were especially pronounced between systems involved in higher level thinking, such as those linked to self-reflection and decision-making, and those tied to sensory processing, including vision and touch, as those boundaries, loose signals that are usually kept apart, begin to mix. In effect, the usual separation between thinking and sensing starts to blur. That shift may help explain why psychedelic experiences often combine altered perception, emotion, and thought in unusual ways. Now, to identify that shared pattern, researchers combined brain imaging data from 11 independent studies conducted across 5 countries, bringing together more than 500 scans from 267 participants. Now, what stands out is not just the pattern itself, but how consistent it is across the medicines that were treated as functionally different. That consistency gives researchers something the field has largely lacked: a common reference point. Instead of studying each psychedelic in isolation, scientists can now compare results against a shared brain signature, making it easier to interpret findings across the studies. Wow, it just never stops what's going on with the psychedelic end of things. Just constantly, there's something, new things coming up, which is great to see all this information and knowledge that is being shared around. So, all right, got the first half of the show done. Just zip, zip, zip. That's right, getting there done quick. Other than that, you're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News, and I will be back in about 3 minutes.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. Rerolled Saturdays. Check it out. Nothing but non-stop cannabis and psychedelic programming. Find it at 420pace.ca.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor? If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
And you're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. Cindy has today off, not only today off, but she's off for the next 2 weeks. And I'll be going alone. So Here we go. I got 3 more stories to cover, and then we'll be all done. And this next story that comes to us from International Cannabis Business Conference, and headline says, analysis finds that cannabis may be effective treatment for prostate cancer. According to the World Cancer Research Fund, prostate cancer is the 4th most common cancer worldwide, and is the 2nd most common cancer in men. In the most recent year, for which statistics are available, which is 2022, there were nearly 1.5 million new cases of prostate cancer diagnosed globally in that year alone. To say, the rate of new cases of prostate cancer was 120 per 100,000 men per year. The death rate was 19 per 100,000 men per year, according to the National Cancer Research Institute. Now, the institute is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, a team of researchers based in South Africa and Canada, and affiliated with various academic research institutions, collaborated on an effort to examine medical cannabis use among prostate cancer patients. These findings were published in the Journal of Medical Cannabis and Cannabinoids. The researchers followed 90 patients diagnosed with prostate cancer, with the participants being placed into 3 groups: patients who relied on chemotherapy treatments, so they had no cannabis; patients who relied on cannabis therapies, they had no chemotherapy; and patients who relied on both chemo and cannabis treatments. They say the PSA PET-CT findings and patient-reported outcomes were assessed at baseline, 3 months and 6 months. Now, the longitudinal changes were analyzed using linear mixed efforts regression within group time interactions, and between group differences were tested with ANOVA. PET-CT category outcomes were evaluated using multinomial logistic regression to determine adjustable odds ratios. The researchers wrote about their methodology. Now, scientific terminal differences in PSA levels were detected amongst groups. Now, both cannabis-containing regimes showed faster PSA decline, but final values were comparable across the treatments. Now, the PET-CT analysis indicated a higher likelihood of remission or tumor reduction in the combined group. Cannabis use alone or combined was associated with greater reductions in pain and improved emotional well-being compared with chemotherapy alone, while improvements in self-care and usual activity scores were also observed. The researchers found that cannabinoid therapy, whether used independently or alongside chemotherapy, was associated with improved pain control and some indicators of tumor response without evidence of harm, the researchers concluded. So we've been talking about cancer and cannabis and for years now, and maybe we've been talking about, but I think it's great to see that the science behind what we've been saying for years is starting to come out and show that basically what we've been saying all along, that cannabis can help people with cancer. And just like any other medicine, it's there's no guarantee. I look at it as no guarantee that it's gonna help everybody, but it's an option that where it can help people, and why not use it? So, as many say, should sometimes be the first line defense, or in that example, the use combined. If a patient wants to go that way, then why not? It says that there is improvements on the way things were done that way. So, alrighty, from that we're going to move on to the next story, and this one is coming to me from Marijuana Moment, and the headline on that says Americans support legalizing marijuana home cultivation amid concerns about pesticide-tainted products, the poll shows. Now, 3 out of 5 Americans say it should be legal for people to grow their own cannabis plants at home, according to a new poll that also shows cannabis consumers are broadly concerned about harmful pesticides in the products they consume. And they should be. Exactly, they should be. They're coming up with this new saying, squamidating. Now, the survey, which was conducted by the Harris Poll on behalf of Royal Queen Seeds, found that 61% of U.S. adults back legalizing cannabis home cultivation, which the company points out is greater than 43% of Americans who say they have consumed cannabis, showing that support for the freedom extends beyond those who want to exercise it for themselves. Now, at the same time, however, 72% of consumers are very concerned about pesticides in the cannabis products, while 65% say that media coverage on tainted cannabis has made them more likely to want to grow their own instead of buying it. The poll also found that 2/3 of cannabis consumers would choose cannabis grown without pesticides, even if it had lower THC than products that did use agrochemicals. Yeah, I'd be on that list. I'd take lower THC over taking high THC with chemicals. I'll spray it all over it. Now, consumers today are more informed and more intentional about what they put into their bodies, says the president of Royal Queen Seeds in a press release. Blindly buying products just because of a high THC percentage is a fading trend. People want cannabis they can trust, and many are turning to home cultivation to take control over quality and safety. Now, other findings of the poll include more than 3 in 4 cannabis consumers say they prefer the high of cannabis over the buzz of alcohol. 39% of Americans and 68% of cannabis users would be more impressed if someone brought homegrown cannabis to a dinner party than a bottle of expensive wine. Hey, there you go. Now, 80% of cannabis consumers say that their use of cannabis was a broader wellness connection to their habits. So there you go, medicinal purposes, wellness. Good stuff. All righty. And yeah, growing, if you can grow your own cannabis at home, if you've got a spot to do that, do it. I would. Well, I do. So yeah, there's so much better, working with the plants. There's a learning curve. There'll be stressful times as well, but in the end, you can produce here in Canada. We're allowed 4 cannabis plants, and if you can grow somewhere between 4 and 8 pounds with those 4 plants, then you should be able to grow enough cannabis for yourself. But I have seen the other side of it too. I've seen failures. So as I said, there's those learning curves, right? So, all right, on to my last story of the day. Now, this one may seem a little bit strange. This is what I was talking about earlier about chickens. Okay, it might seem strange to you, but I have seen the proof. Okay, and it's available for everybody to see. Okay, but I'll get into that after the story. There we go. Headline on this next story, which is coming to us from the International Cannabis Business Conference, says study finds cannabis seeds has potential as poultry feed. That's right. If the results of a recent study conducted by researchers based in Morocco are any indication, the emerging global cannabis industry could tap into that poultry feed market. The Morocco-based investigators conducting the study are affiliated with several academic institutions, and their findings were recently published in the Canadian Journal of Animal Science. This study evaluated the effects of dietary inclusion of cannabis sativa seeds on growth performance, carcass traits, blood biochemistry, and breast muscle fat acid composition in Cobb 500 broilers from day 21 to day 42, the researchers wrote. They went on to say, breast muscle, fatty acid composition was significantly improved. That's right, improved. Under the present experimental conditions, cannabis seeds inclusion altered lipid metabolism and improved the fatty acid profile of broiler meat without marked adverse effects on growth performance, confirming its potential as a functional feed ingredient in poultry production, the researchers concluded. Now, the effort in Morocco is not necessarily the first of its kind. Researchers affiliated with various academic institutions in Thailand previously conducted a separate study in which they examined the effects of adding cannabis sativa residues to the feed of broiler chickens. The specific focus of that research was to see if adding cannabis to feed impacted the growth and meat characteristics of broiler chickens. And the researchers in Thailand determined the results showed that while cannabis residue supplementation did not improve growth performance, it improved meat quality by reducing fat content and enhancing the flavors through evaluated free amino acid levels, thereby increasing the overall nutritional value of the meat. Can I say? Right there. Increases the value of the meat. Meat's better for you. And as I said, this has been known for quite a while, but it takes time, right? Get these research done. But take a look on in YouTube and look for a video called Reefer Roasters. Back in the 90s. Yeah, 90s. Okay, so like 35 years ago, when you get it to where this date, I think it was like 94. A fella got some people together and they fed chickens with hemp seed. And that's what they ate. The chickens, you can see in the video, the chickens go nuts. They just love the seed. Then they took these chickens that they fed the seed to, and they entered them into a contest that was being run by the DEA. That's right. DEA, it was a union association. It's association to the DEA. And it was a barbecue, chicken barbecue. And in the end, this group of guys and people who did this, they won the contest. You can see them being presented an award. They couldn't believe, the judges couldn't believe the quality of the meat that was coming from these chickens. So what this study just does is backs up everything these guys did back in the early 90s. And as I said, check it out. Reefer Roasters, you'll find it on YouTube, as well as the program Time for Hemp. Also did a special on the Reefer Roasters, so you can check it out there as well on the Time for Hemp YouTube channel. So Reefer Roasters, check it out. All righty. Other than that, I am done for the day. That's it. Got through all the stories, other than the one that I shut off by mistake, which had to do with the rescheduling of cannabis in the States, and had to do with Roger Stone. Was he thinks that somebody is delaying the process of rescheduling on purpose. And you can check it out at Marijuana Moments, as well. It's on the Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News Facebook page. But yeah, he thinks someone's holding it up. So, but I don't know. Who knows? I just try to keep everybody informed of what's going on down there in the U.S. because it is so important, not only to the U.S. but to the world when it comes to it's a global thing when it comes to the cannabis. There's no doubt about that, because the U.S. has had the thumb on that for years, and it's time to change that. So, all right, that's it for today. I hope you found it informative and educational. Thanks go out for everybody who's tuned into the broadcast. Really appreciate it. Other than that, thanks to our sponsors, Limestone City Hydroponics.ca, the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, as well as At-Eze.ca. And we'll see you Thursday morning. Other than that, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.